Welcome to the Grit.org podcast with Colby Harris and Brian Harbin. In these episodes, they speak to top achievers in athletics and business to understand the habits and mindset they apply in order to build more grit.
Welcome back to the Grit.org podcast. My name's Colby Harris. Alongside me, as always, is Brian Harbin, and we are here with today's guest, Jason Babin. Jason, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, I really appreciate you guys having me on today.
Jason was raised in Antwerp Township, Michigan. During his high school career, he lettered in football, wrestling, and track. Jason then continued his football career at Western Michigan University before being drafted to the NFL in 2004. After retiring in 2016, Jason decided to dedicate his full focus towards his real estate career and his family. Jason's now able to handle any and all real estate needs. He now resides in Ponte Vedra Beach with his wife and 3 sons, and we're just thrilled to have him here today to discuss sports, business, relationships, and more. So without further ado, Jason, can you take us back to the beginning and really share some more about your upbringing and maybe some of the advantages or disadvantages you had in your home in Michigan?
Well, the advantage is, I would say it was very blue collar. Okay. So it wasn't like, and I always get on the Ponte Vedra kids here that I coach. And I said, oh, it's okay. Well, you didn't win. We can go to the Inn Club and get a smoothie, and I do that in jest, but, I grew up where it was, hey, if you didn't get it, like you weren't getting a little ribbon or a prize or anything like that.
No participation.
No, it just wasn't the era I grew up in or the kind of community setting I grew up in.
Yeah, and so tell us about kind of your introduction into sports, how you got into sports. What was your first love in sports? So take us back to.
I think as a young boy, I think. I definitely need to be in sports, as most young men do. A lot of energy and they need to get out so they can focus on other things as well. But I played everything: baseball, I did wrestling, football as a kid, and I just liked playing, any sport really. I enjoyed being, on the practices, with all the different guys on the team and hanging out. That part as a kid just was pretty cool.
Yeah. So you were a multi-sport athlete, did a little bit of everything like you just said, but you were actually the state champion wrestler your senior year of high school as well. So can you tell us more about football itself and kind of what attracted you to football, even being high skilled at all these other sports?
Well, I definitely enjoyed playing all the sports. I think as I got older into the high school levels and started talking to college coaches, weighing my options. Hey, do you want to wrestle in college? Do you want to play football in college? Do you want to do both of these in college? And then looking, a little further on, and I really wasn't sure, truthfully, because I really wanted to be a Navy SEAL. That was kind of my first plan. And I did sign up for the Navy, and they turned me down because of my medical records. I had asthma really bad and allergies and some other ailments with my feet. So I kind of took a little bit of time off between high school and college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And truthfully, Coach Knowles and Coach Darnell at Western kept calling me to come up for a visit because I wasn't sure, and they kept calling me, and I was like, you know what? So then I went there, and they showed me a really good time. I had a nice time, at that visit. And it really, I guess, the football experience versus the wrestling experience was night and day from. I guess not so much how they treated you, but more like just the overall experience, like the glitz, the glamour, the people, the pizzazz. So I was like, I think I could do this. This seems like it's me. So it was definitely, my decision was based on, maybe all the wrong things, but maybe the right things at the same time.
Yeah, did you feel that football too, the camaraderie, being a team sport, I surf a little bit too, so I understand independent sports, there's definitely elements to it that are different than team sport. I mean, the responsibilities on your shoulders, all your success is really up to you. Was that something that you enjoyed about wrestling as well, or did football and the teamwork and the camaraderie kind of draw you in as well?
I enjoyed the wrestling because it was just me. If I won, if I lost, it was all me. And I like that aspect of it. But football just had the different thing. I mean, you got to hit people, every play. And there's just something, almost, just really basic when it comes down to like a male, in that role, where you just need to go out and just be dominant and play after play, and it's encouraged and you get rewarded for it.
Well, and this is around the same time too. In addition to football and wrestling, you also were introduced to real estate. So tell us about kind of that process.
So real estate was always, I guess, was something I liked but didn't know I liked. So my dad was an electrical contractor by trade, but then also got into some, smaller developments, doing some spec homes, things like that. So as a young man, I always was, you're with your dad. He's your guy. He's your best friend. You look up to him. You want to be everything, you want to do everything he's doing. And I just thought it was so cool. Like, we could just build a house from scratch. How do we do it? I'm in, and I remember being young and my boys is my youngest son's age, really, like around 9 when I kind of really started being allowed to kind of participate, and I loved it. And he had me learn everything from concrete to framing to roofing to HVAC to electrical to plumbing, all different facets of it. I was on Bobcats with heavy machinery by the time I was 10, and it was cool. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. Like when I got done with high school, I'm working with my dad, I was like, screw college. Like, this is cool. I really enjoyed it. So I guess that the seed was planted at a young age and I didn't know it. And then obviously with going to college and the college years, you kind of focus on other things of those 4 years. They're extremely fun, but, you really focus on not really, so too much extracurricular activity like real estate. At least I didn't anyways. But then once I got out of college and was in the NFL, then I had some, extra money, and the off season, that's when I really realized how much I liked it. That's when I started buying properties, single properties, renovating them, developing them, renting them, and then, start building some. It was, it was just, I'm sure, I guess people around me, like my mom, and dad probably knew it was going to happen before it happened, but, I guess I didn't.
Yeah, well, we can definitely tell you have a passion for it in the process itself, really, of starting from the ground up, putting something together, and that fulfillment at the end of a job, whether you get rid of it or you just get to see the finished product and kind of what that's like for you. So taking a quick step back, tell us a little bit more about your time at Western Michigan. I know you just discussed it briefly. You went on a great visit there, had a lot of fun, really drawed you in. But what would you say if you had any advice for other people navigating that process as to where they should go to college to be an athlete? What would you say about your experience that you would want someone else to know that's looking at that path?
Well, let me break those down kind of in order. First one, I always worked hard, always trained hard, but I like to have fun too. Especially as a young man. Like there was just, especially going from a small town where there wasn't a lot going on, and then you get to Western Michigan, and I'm like, oh my goodness, look at all the parties, all the girls, all the extracurricular activity, all this is so much, and I definitely enjoyed myself. But there was a moment. It was after my sophomore year, and Coach Darnell, the head coach at Western Michigan, pulled up his office and he said, "Hey, Jason," this was in the off season. He goes, "Hey, you have what it takes to play at the next level. Like, you have the things. It's up to you how you choose from here on out the rest of your time at Western to apply it." There was much more into this conversation, and like I said, I always worked hard. I didn't miss workouts. I always trained, but I left there thinking like, man, I should start training like an Olympic athlete. Maybe I shouldn't go out partying this weekend. Maybe I should get to rest. Maybe I should stretch. I should hydrate. Like all the things that I could be doing extra to improve my game. And I left that meeting right down the elevator because we're in his office on the 3rd floor, thinking like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm all in. From this moment on, I'm all in. I'm gonna figure out ways I can get better, and I'm gonna skip out on spring breaks. I'm gonna do all the things, the little things that are gonna help me succeed. So that was like, I guess, a turning point, right, in my career and really in my life. To say I'm all in on something, and really mean it and understand what that meant. But making your decision, and I think in hindsight, and it's kind of unique because I have a junior and a freshman and a 3rd grader, all boys that play football, right? And the older boys are, they're really getting into it. And I've been forced to kind of relearn how the recruiting process works now, because it's not just making copies of VHS tapes and sending them out. So I've been kind of immersed with that. And plus I have some other athletes that I coach and been coaching for, 4 or 5 years, 6 years that I want to see them get to the right school as well. But for me, I tell these young men that, trying to find a place that is going to fit your personality, your growth needs, what you need to develop. This place might be cool, might be shiny, might be fun. I said, but if this doesn't fit who you are and pulls the best out of you, that's our goal. Let's get you into a system, into a coaching staff, into an environment, into a culture that is going to help you become the best you can be. Because I always tell people all the time, I say, listen, I'm an adequate youth coach, right? But that's not why I'm doing what I do. I'm not really a coach. I said coaches get paid, and those kids get paid, and they're scholarship professional. So I'm just here to make these young men the best young men as possible. We're learning life lessons through football and other sports, whatever sport is that I'm coaching, whether it's wrestling or lacrosse. And to me, that's the most important part, right? Getting the kids in the right situation and helping them become the best young men that they can become.
And turning point, it definitely was for you at that point in Northern Michigan. I mean, just some of your stats: you had 38 sacks, 299 tackles, 8 forced fumbles. As a senior, you started all 12 games at the left defensive end position, first team All-American, honors from NFL Draft Report, voted Defensive Player of the Year in your conference, team MVP. And so kind of looking back over those 4 years, what would you say were some of the things that you learned about yourself, favorite memory, favorite story, or any kind of defining moments other than the one you mentioned where you went all in?
I think there was, there was definitely plenty of great moments. When we get together, we laugh about whether it was a good play or bad play. Because I played some offenses as well, and truthfully, I never wore a mouthpiece, right? And even in the NFL, I never wore a mouthpiece. But then I think it was maybe my junior year or senior year, because I played at like tight end or fullback on the heavy packages, and I got a little pop pass. Maybe it was against Purdue. I can't remember. And I did a mouthpiece in. And I guess I've never really been hit before, like a full-on hit. And I remember getting hit and getting rattled, going, I got to wear a mouthpiece when I play offense. And to me, that was one of those moments where we just remember it. You remember just like your first time you get hit. Like I'm always the person doing the hitting. And then all of a sudden, I think it was Purdue. We get hit, and it's like boom, boom. I'm like, oh crap, I didn't like that. I definitely didn't like that. So
how did that change for you? I know mainly you played defensive end, some linebacker, but when I was looking through your stats while you were at Western Michigan, you started catching some passes as well. You had maybe 4 to 5 receptions a season. How did you end up starting to play some on the offensive end? And was that something you kind of enjoyed for a while, or were you just pretty sold on playing defense as you made your way to the next level?
Honestly, it was just what the team needed. They needed a big body over there.
Yeah.
And I said, no problem. And even like I played special teams, even as first round draft pick, as senior year or starter, like I enjoyed playing special teams. I mean, I thought it was a big part of the game. So just never wanting to come off the field kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'll literally stay on the whole time if they would let me.
It's still like a little kid, just wanting to get every rep. That's awesome. So another question I want to ask, obviously, you actually met your wife while you were at Western Michigan as well. You guys have now been together about 20 years. You have 3 boys together. Can you tell us more just about what value that's added for you as you were coming out of college, went into the NFL, now an entrepreneur and a coach, and raising your boys? What has that relationship meant for you? Well, let me back up. I think if she was telling the story, and I was telling the story of how we met, might be different, but we'll leave that for another time. But I think for me, I think looking back, it's kind of funny. We were talking about this because the kids were looking through some old photos, and they were like, wow, you guys were young when you got married. And my wife's like, crap, we were young, She's looking at my oldest son like, you're not getting married when you're 19, my wife was, 1 year out of high school, and I was, got together, was still in college. And it was, I guess, it's one of those things where you just kind of know, And I remember talking to my dad about it. I'm sitting in his truck, and we were actually heading to go fishing one weekend. And I said, Dad, I said, how do you know? He goes, well, if you have any doubts, the answer is probably no. And I remember that kind of just hitting me kind of heavy, like all weekend, like, I'm like, do I have any doubts? And truth be told, I was, a little bit of a wild child, from very beginning all the way through college. So having someone like my wife that's an absolute saint to keep me on the straight and narrow and be, and to be that mom for the boys, like having that mom that when kids all come over her house that makes cookies for everyone that everyone loves, like that mom, like, and she wanted to be that mom, so like having that person, and that my wife is so unbelievably awesome, especially when you have 3 boys, and the fact that she
kind of deals with, I'd say, her 4 boys, from the laundry to the amount of food that's consumed, just the way we are, especially now that, there's the 2 ones are pretty much little men. It's been really the only way that we could have probably got to where we're at. You know what I mean? As far as the longevity of my career, the quality of the my kids, their manners, behaviors, like it really is symbiotic. It goes, one wouldn't work without the other.
Well, I can definitely echo what you're saying there. I've got 3 boys as well. My wife, she's the same type personality, and so I can definitely relate to how they make all things possible. For us, for sure. So around this time as well, in addition to playing college football, Western Michigan, in a serious relationship with your future wife, this is also when you're also getting into commercial development. So tell us about, how you were able to manage that and what you were doing with commercial development.
So I've always had this, I don't know, I guess I wouldn't call it an ability or a gift, but just this kind of way my brain works. When I walk into a space or see a space, something I just envision things there differently, or change it, or what should be there, what shouldn't be there, how it should look. And I've always just had that enjoyment of doing that, whether it's, even if it's for me or it's not for me. Like, I help friends all the time, be like, hey, a lot of my wife's girlfriends are always be like, hey, I want to redo my bathroom. And I don't redo bathrooms, but I redo bathrooms just because, they'll ask me like, hey, can you just come on, just to help me. Did you redo the bathroom, And then I'll be at, picking out tile or picking out paint, or, text them over like a drawing I made of the space. And that's just because they're, close friends of mine or my wife's. But for whatever reason, I've always just enjoyed that, that concept. Like, okay, well, what would be perfect here? All right, here we go. Even now when, I look at something or go look at a property, like, I took my wife with me recently, look at this property, and we walked in and I just started writing stuff. Like I usually it's a renovation house to flip, right? And it needed a lot of work. We walked around through it, and all of a sudden I just start drawing. What I'll do is I'll pick a wall, right? This wall is probably going to stay. It looks decent. It's dry. And I'll just start, here are all the changes, what we're going to do. This is what we're doing to this house. Here's the blueprints, and it'll just start pouring out of me. So I don't know. It's one of those things where can't say I learned it, or someone taught me to do it. I just trial and error, and like doing it.
Came naturally. It was a good way to occupy your time during the off season too. So diving into upcoming draft night, right? So you're heading into the 2004 draft. You finish your 4 years at Western Michigan. You were eventually drafted by the Houston Texans in the first round with the 27th overall pick in the 2004 NFL draft. Can you paint the picture for us as to just where your head was at and what that sensation's like to finally hear your name called on the dream stage?
A lot of those people are like, oh, this is the moment I've always wanted, but I can't really say that, It was obviously what I was working for and what the goal was, but it wasn't like, oh, this is it, Like you see those moments like, Mama, we made it, It wasn't like that. It was more of, okay, that was the box checked in this plan. All right, next box, all right, what do we got to work on next? What's the next step? What's the plan from here on out? But that night for me was pretty cool. Everyone knew I was going to be the first round draft pick, so it was a lot, not as stressful. I'm sure other people have. We're like, I don't know, I'm getting drafted because we already had some conversations, prior to the draft. But I chose to do it in my hometown, or I guess around all the people that I grew up. And I grew up in a small town where, listen, if you were doing something wrong, someone might put hands on you, and it was deservingly so, and, growing up and seeing all these people that have been around my life, my entire life, see me from, a little kid to, now an adult, I'm about to get drafted. I wanted to share that with them. And we had a really, we had a good sized party, but not too big, in my hometown of Pawpaw, Michigan.
And, so take us back there too, as far as, first contract, was it 5 years, $6 million as a 23-year-old? How do you feel like you managed that and handled that in terms of?
Well, I had a Ford Ranger that was only 2 years old, and I had that the rest of my rookie year. We bought a house, but outside of that, it was pretty normal.
Yeah.
I lived a pretty normal life and still
You stayed humble.
It wasn't like, all right, I'm going out buy jewelry or, I'm going to do all this crazy stuff. I mean, that just wasn't what I was into anyways. Especially the fact that I think my wife was pregnant too, my rookie year. Yeah, so we were starting our family, and we both wanted to be young parents, for this part of our life now. Like, we're coming towards the tail end to a certain degree, and we're both still pretty young. So that was all part of the plan.
Yeah, and thinking as a entrepreneur now, former athlete, still coaching, still doing all these things. I mean, you're just wise beyond your years now that you've had that experience that so many other people seek out. Would you have any advice for anyone that is moving into that next step and they are signing these contracts of such substantial amounts? I mean, you were smart enough to do the right things with your money and sit on it and save for your family. Is there any advice investment-wise you would have for someone else that's in that position now that's getting drafted and coming into money that they had never seen before?
I think the best advice is to do the safest thing, whatever that is. Just because I made plenty of mistakes too. I'm not, not sitting up on my soapbox and I did it perfect. But the safest thing, because, as a young person, whether it's if it's a professional lady athlete, there's so many things you just don't know. I mean, that you don't know. And after you have real world experience, and that just takes time. You can't fast forward that, so just taking your time and put it in the safest place. So then, when you are ready, which everyone thinks they're ready, but they're not ready, then the opportunity is still there. And two, I always tell the young guys, usually, a lot of times I have them over, at the house before the season, dude, focus on the season. Don't worry about any of the stuff. Whether we got you in a rental house or you got a new house or mom doesn't need a Mercedes, get her a Ford Focus, It runs, it's brand new, it starts, it's fine. If she doesn't like that, then you have bigger problems, So keeping those, that stress, of distraction away and just keeping it safe. So when you're ready, it's there.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think a big part of it, too, is just having that humility to want to learn and be willing to sacrifice in the short term for a long-term gain. And that really leads us right into your rookie season and starting your NFL career. I mean, tell us a little bit more about that and kind of what you were feeling. I mean, did you feel some weight on your shoulders, high expectations for yourself? How did you manage that, and how did you roll right into your first season in the NFL?
Well, I definitely felt the expectations of, hey, because back then, a 26th pick was expected to make an impact immediately. Nowadays we're like, well, he's a situational pass rusher. Well, it's different because now the amount of money, you're paid as well. But for me, looking back, I was an okay outside linebacker. I've never played it before. They're like, well, he's athletic, he's fast, he can change direction, so let's put him on outside linebacker. And it was a totally new concept for me. I was used to going one direction, downhill, putting the pads on someone, and that's it. And now it was a huge learning curve for me, and I think by the time I got it, it was a little too late, truthfully. But looking back, it's kind of what I needed, because you were talking earlier about humility. I needed some humility, I had a little too much BDE, swinging. So in the grand scheme of me becoming who I am as a father and a dad, it's not even including, professional career, I think I needed that. I really did need that additional struggle, just because I had to come down to really understanding it wasn't about me, because I think I definitely was a selfish person by nature. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Because if you want to be successful, you have to be selfish, but understanding, the give and take in that.
And, obviously give yourself some credit. I mean, you had a fantastic rookie season playing all 16 games, 51 solo tackles, 12 assisted tackles, 4 sacks. I know you mentioned you had a lot of personal growth that season, but, anything else you felt like you learned about yourself or what it was like adapting to, being a rookie on a, clearly established team at that point?
I think it was, for me, it was the biggest issue was, now it's professional. Now it's people are getting fired, and you really feel that, in the room, because we were 116. I think I averaged about 91 snaps, my rookie year. We didn't really come off the field. and meetings went from 7:30, 7:15, 7, 6:45, 6:30, because they were trying to find ways to get better, air quotes, so we're just going to meet more. We're going to show up early. We're going to do more, because the coaches knew, like, that was their second round. That was the second year of the team, I think, or third year. So they knew, like, hey, if we don't win, we're
done.
We're getting rid of people. People are getting fired, and to see that and be a part of that as a rookie, I mean, it wasn't fun, So I remember driving in some days like, man, this sure isn't like college, because it was, obviously when you're 116, people are worried about feeding their families, so they're getting fired.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. I was just thinking about this morning before we came in. It's the uncontrollable of being a professional athlete. I mean, you get your agent, but at the end of the day, a lot of it is out of your hands. I mean, it's a business, just like you said. It's no longer just sports. It has become a business where they're going to move you if they see it fit. And that's kind of, over the next few years, you were performing at a super high level, but from 2007 to 2010, you ended up playing for a few different teams. And in 2010, you were traded to the Tennessee Titans, where you recorded one of your best seasons of your career and ended up being invited to your first Pro Bowl in 2011. At the midpoint of your career, what did it mean to you to reach the Pro Bowl and just be performing at such a high level at that point?
Well, I mean, from a stat standpoint, I played outside linebacker, the first half of my career. And I was, like I said, I was okay. I wasn't terrible. And then I was in Seattle. There was 2 years where I didn't play, So there was a lot of frustration. The cool thing about Seattle was I got to be with my teammate at the time, Patrick Kearney. And as you guys know, he's a Pro Bowler. And I got to see how he really just lives his life, And I was at a point in my career which was pretty low, where I think most people were thinking at that moment, like, well, yeah, maybe it's another year, maybe not, and he's done. I wasn't thinking that. I was just thinking, like, okay, what can I do? How can I do it better? And I've always been a big fan of emulating, right? Whether that's football related, business related, whatever. And so I'm like, well, shit. And Patrick and I had the same agent. So I'm like, well, what is Patrick doing? I mean, and he lived his life like an Olympian. I mean, he had a 7 o'clock every day, period, or 6 o'clock. It didn't matter. If he had to date with his girlfriend, now a wife, like, that's just the way it was. He slept in a hyperbaric chamber. He did all these things. So I'm like, well, I'm going to start working out with him. I'm going to start watching tape with him. Guess what I did? I bought a hyperbaric chamber. I started sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber, So I found ways to just double down on my craft. And at the same time, I was like, listen, I know where I'm at. Like, I know what I can do. Whether or not I get the opportunity or not, that's how it goes. Life's not fair. So when I went to Tennessee, I remember still sitting in the room with Coach Wash, and I'm like, listen, all I want is a fair shake. If I'm the best guy, play me. If I'm not, hey, listen, I'm a grown man. I can take it. And I remember him. He leaned out the door and said, "Fisher, get in here." And he said, Coach Fisher came in. This is when I was visiting there, and he goes, "Hey, who decides who plays on D-line?" He goes, "You do, Coach. Pick whoever you want," right? And and did I, could have been interpreted as, a little banter back and forth. Yeah, it could have been, but you can. I've always had an innate sense about reading people, and I'm like, these guys aren't lying. This is how it really is here. I'm like, all right. I literally signed on the dotted line. I'm like, whatever. I just want 1 year contract to go play football. I don't even care what you guys pay me. I just want to play football again. Because not playing for 2 years and then being outside linebacker and just wanting to play defensive end, I was like, listen, that's all I want to do. I just want to play football. Let me put my hand in the ground and go play.
And, now that you're out of the league, reflecting back on your time in the NFL, what would you say would be some things that you learned about it that you really want to, that you apply in your business today, or that you really want to instill those same values in your boys?
I think, and it's just funny you say that, because it's one of the things that we started during COVID, right? Because my oldest became kind of got to that age where, and I've been waiting for this, I could kind of turn the volume up a little bit. Like, hey, it's ready. You're ready. You want to take the next step, and this is what you want. That's awesome. If you don't, that's fine too. But he that's what he wanted. So we got up every morning before school. We went to the gym and trained, Saturday mornings we got up early. We trained, we ran sprints, and it was that consistency, that showing up every day. And my oldest son, he was a little bit like late bloomer like me, you know what I mean? And now all of a sudden it's like he's a junior and he's like, wow, everyone else just stopped. I'm still going, you know? And it's like he's 7, now it's like football. He gets it. It's like he saw the last 2 years of the work he put in and saw the results, and he's like, holy Dad. He's like, Dad, it worked. You know, we had that like moment, you know, we were just sitting there hanging out, you know, after his first football game when he went out there and, you know, he played extremely well. And I could just see it. And he's just beaming from face, you know, he just happy, you know, like this works. And so, that's me. My point of me saying that is people that are willing to get up every morning, show up every morning, to keep showing up, whether they're having success, having failure, that's the most important thing. You know, especially an entrepreneur, you know, you're going to fail most of the time. You're going to be unsuccessful most of the time. Like that's just the nature of the game if you're an entrepreneur. But to have that resilience in your heart and have that passion, that belief, to keep showing up every morning early, keep showing up, staying late, doing all those things, maybe whether you're getting results right now or not, that's the key.
Yeah, I love that too, especially as you're experiencing now with your son now. So it just makes me think, I mean, you're clearly very wise now to be able to pass these things on to your son and talk about the discipline it takes to really be successful. And I know you had a great relationship with your late father as well, but is there someone in particular, if not your dad, that did that for you at that age? Because I know you said you were a bit of a wild child, but was there someone that kind of showed you the ropes as to, hey, if you really want this, this is what it's going to take?
It was kind of a two-part thing. So my dad had started his company kind of, you know, we were very, very middle class, you know, if not poor, when he started his company. And that was kind of when I was kind of, like I said, becoming, you know, like 8, 9 to have some real recollection of it. And when he started his company, I mean, he'd get up at 5 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, you know, and if I wanted to see him, you know, I had to get up. And I would hear him, you know, wake up, and I'd get up, sit with him, we'd have coffee, you know, and seeing that. And then, you know, in the summertime, be like, well, I want to go to work with you. You know, I want to show up. I'll come sweep the job site, you know, because you want to be like your dad. So that, you know, example, or that, like, you know, following someone's example kind of thing was just something I saw him do. So I'm going to do it. And did I know why I was doing it? No, didn't know why. And the other caveat, or the other, I guess, person is my cousin Kevin. He was kind of my quasi older brother, right? He was older than me, and all I remember, maybe I was 6, and he was in high school at the time, or maybe just in high school. But I went to the gym to go shoot around in the wintertime, and I'd always tag around with him, right? And I shot a basketball for a little bit, and then he goes, "Hey, why don't we take you up to the wrestling room?" Right? I was a terrible basketball player, apparently. So I got sent up to the wrestling room, you know, and then everywhere he went, though, you know, I remember being on the sidelines in high school games, being on the sidelines at college games, being on the sidelines of, you know, being in the dugout in baseball games in college, you know, just seeing him, going to the gym with him, you know, being like that little tag along. Well, I want to do it, you know, Kevin does. You know, Kevin just got, you know, the player of the game, you know, and then I guess for me, when it came full circle, we both got inducted to our high school Hall of Fame at the same time. And I remember they read all my accolades first, right? Then they read his accolades, and it took about 3 times as long. You know, he was baseball, basketball, football, you know what I mean? All the records he set, you know, track. I was like, holy shit, you know? So it was a cool moment for that. But between my dad and my cousin Kevin, you know, they were always my 2 rocks, right? Who do I call? You know, I mean, there's times where something really cool happens, and I find myself picking up my phone to call my dad and tell him about it. I'd be like, oh, you got to hear about this, you know? And I start dialing his number. I'm like, you know, because, you know, he passed away a few years ago. But then I'm like, okay, you know, I can call my cousin Kevin, you know? So those are definitely my 2 people, you know, in my life.
Yep. And I think that's awesome, too, that there's people that seem to set a higher standard for you when you surround yourself with people like that and you watch what they do. That desire is within you, but they also kind of give you a blueprint on how to get there. So circling back around to your NFL career, you, correct me if I'm finished out 12 years
12
in the
years,
NFL,
yep.
right? So long career. I mean, what kind of made the decision for you to close that chapter and hang up the cleats? Was there a certain point where you just decided, okay, I think it's time, I'm ready to do it, and you exit the NFL? Or what did that situation, kind of how did that unfold for you as you decided to leave?
Well, the last few years, I really just wanted to get a Super Bowl ring. I mean, I'll be truthful. I wanted to get on a team that was going to the playoffs, and, you know, I wanted that moment so bad. I want to be a part of that moment more than anything. Because I've always, for whatever reason, I've been on teams just, not winning games, whether it was the Texans at the time or Seattle at the time or whatever team I was on, it seemed like, man, like, am I the reason why we're losing? It just seemed like, I guess a little bit of luck. So my wife was understanding about that, but the boys were at the age where they couldn't switch schools anymore. So I'm gone half a year, towards the end of my career, and it's not easy being separated from your wife and kids half the season, missing out on stuff, and I just at that point I'm like, could I play another year? Maybe, but I was just ready to not miss out on stuff anymore.
And at that point, did you just dive, head first into real estate? And tell us about how you decided to.
I think I took about 3 months off, kind of, supposedly, but it was more like a month. I'm just not the kind of person that can, I guess, sit around and be idle and not be putting goals together and plans together and thoughts together and concepts. It just I guess just the way I'm wired.
Yeah, tell us a bit about Red Zone Realty, everything you've done in there, and kind of, I know you have a number of other businesses you play a part in. Anything you want to share or don't want to share, but yeah, tell us a little bit more about Red Zone and the various things you offer.
So I think we're in year 5 of Red Zone, I think. We have 4 offices from St. Augustine to Jack's Beach to San Marco. We also have a couple franchises as well. We just finished up it was quite the process, the franchising model. We hired a company to go through that process, and I had no idea how intense it would be to create this whole giant booklet. And we've just finished it up. We sold our first franchise, and then this winter we're going to start heading out to actually launch and start selling them to the general population, not general population, but people that are we would like to see them sold to, and we're kind of marketing towards people that have real estate teams, because if you can run a real estate team, then you can generally run an office. So we're excited to start launching the franchises.
Yeah. That's awesome. I know I've seen before you've talked about wanting to be nationwide. Is there anything you've noticed so far already about what's going to help you scale your real estate business, or as you're seeking grow, what's going to be that catalyst to help you do that?
So there was one thing that was important when I started this, and that was to create a kind of a unique culture, a different culture within the organization than most real estate companies. And what I did is I purposely mimicked the locker room, right? And I mimicked the locker room, and those locker rooms you have where you might not have the biggest guy, the strongest guy, the fastest guy, but you have a collection made up of people that are selfless, people that are learning based, people want to improve, people that can handle coaching, want coaching, they want to improve, they want to grow. So when we bring these agents that we interviewed, obviously you're always recruiting agents. We have a certain standard, right? And I kind of call it the Patriot standard, right? Because everyone knows when you go to the Patriots, there's one way to do things here. If you don't do them, doesn't matter who you are, you're gone. And we've tried to hold that standard to no matter who, whether you're a first-time agent or a big-time producer, on purpose, right? And that's what's kind of defined our culture. And within, I guess, the real estate world, people know, like, oh, well, Red Zone's different. We have trainings, we have coachings. Like, if you are just starting out, we have Real Estate 101. We have a big training center, right? All Zoom technology, so you can do it online as well. If you want a high level training, we do that on Thursdays, right? Now, if you want to start your own team and grow your own team, then we have a special masterclass, for that as well. So we're all about training, developing, growing. And at our headquarters, we have a whole video production, still photography, podcast studio for agents to use, because as you guys know, content is king, so we have this studio, use it however you want. We have photographers, anything imagine, right? It's there at their disposal. Just do it, right? And then we also have classes on how to do it, how to leverage, so creating that sports locker room mentality, with the coach, almost like an org chart. We have specialty coaches within an organization. Like, hey, if you need something with our online, with our inside sales department, you go see this person. You need something with development, see this person. You have a broker question, see this person. So we've got different verticals within the organization, kind of a coaching staff.
Well, I was going to ask too, so for your day-to-day, do you spend a lot of your time like managing a lot of the realtors, or you I'm still sure have a lot of your own portfolio of like buying homes, fixing them up, renting them out. Tell us about kind of your day-to-day.
So my day-to-day is always very interesting. I live by the time blocking method. So I lay my calendar out on Sundays and kind of go by, this is what I'm going to accomplish between these times. And then I try and stay as focused as I can with that, because I have football practice in the morning, youth practice in the evening. So usually I eat lunch in about 5 minutes. I have a pre-made lunch I eat. So I try and maximize my day as much as possible. But for me, I have such an unbelievable team, right? If I didn't show up to Red Zone, things would probably be better than when I left. It'd be new agents. Things would be going really well. I have some projects that I'm working on now. That rolling out some ancillary brands with Red Zone, because we have property management. But these are some home services brands that we'll be rolling out. Companies are already up and rolling, but we'll be announcing the relationship to these companies shortly.
It's really cool to hear that, you've really created this umbrella, kind of a trickle-down system of keeping things in-house, so to say, with everything you do. So where would you say, is there a certain level that you believe that you've find that satisfaction in business, or is it kind of once you get to somewhere, it's almost like, all right, what's the next best thing I could do? Or, how do you kind of dictate where you invest your time, so to say?
Well, I have an 80-20 rule. Right, 80% of my time needs to be on cash-producing activities, and 20% of the time is to be on planning, scheduling, being creative, which is hard because I'm definitely lean towards more the creative side. So the time blocking keeps me organized in what I need to accomplish, what the businesses need me to accomplish, because I put myself in a rainmaker position. Say we got to make sure people are coming the door, no matter what company it is. They have to be coming through the door. Keep the lights on. But to your earlier question about, I guess what's next, I never know, in the sense of like, what do I want to do next? I love challenges. I'll give you an example, even in my personal life. So we changed it up for spring break last year. We went to Machu Picchu, and we hiked the Incan Trail. We did Huayna Picchu, and the boys weren't excited about it, but it ended up being a really good trip, because usually we go skiing. I said, we're going to change it up. And while we're on the trip, my youngest son, he was like a billy goat flying up the mountains. So him and I on the Huayna Picchu, which overlooks Machu Picchu, it's like a vertical climb, this little like almost like cylinder thing that comes straight up out of the ground. Said, hey, what's the fastest time? So like, all right, I was like, Bronson, let's my youngest son named Bronson. He goes, let's go for it. Fine. Okay. He loved it. I enjoyed it. I like challenges, like working out still. And so then he was like, well, what other ones can we do, Dad? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's Google some stuff. And I don't really know much about hiking or any of that stuff. So we started Googling and found, and I've heard about it before, the 7 summits around the world. So I was like, I don't know. Like, here, let's do the 7 summits. You want to do one of these? He's like, all right, let's do it. And he's like, well, what's the youngest kid to do it? Right? So then we start Googling that and find that. And I'm like, well, you want to be the youngest kid to climb all 7 summits? Let's see if we can do it. So he's like, yeah, let's do it, Dad. So we actually started last July, and we did Kilimanjaro, number 4, and then we're going to do the Papua New Guinea over Christmas break sometime. So we're trying to. Well, I guess I'm not setting a world record. I'm just going with my son, in the hopes of setting the world record. So we're on a unique journey like that.
That's amazing. And I was going to ask you, kind of to that point, with what you've been through, your experience, obviously you and your wife been together for, a long time. What, kind of an overarching parenting philosophy, what you really want to instill in your kids that you see that they're going to need to be successful later on? So
there's this, when people ask me like, oh, you want kids to play football? I said, I don't if they play football or don't play football. I said, there's a few things my wife and I want our kids to be. I want to be smart. I want them to be healthy, and we want to be happy. I don't want to be successful, right? So everyone says, oh, money doesn't buy happiness. Well, money buys you security. Like things are a little bit easier when you have some money in life. Relationships are easier. You can go on vacations. You can buy a babysitter. So to a certain degree, yes, money's important. How much, that's arguable. But I think a lot of people forget the healthy part. A lot of people forget the happy part, right? Because you can be successful without being happy. You can be successful without being healthy, and that's just not how we live our life a certain way, like we don't buy soda at our house. My wife cooks dinner. We pack, we on Sundays usually cook a bunch of food, make everyone's lunches. Here's chicken and rice and broccoli. It's not because we're some crazy fitness family, just because you don't want kids eating processed food, so there's just certain things that are non-negotiable for us.
Yeah, I love that. And even one of our previous guests, Dr. Saman Soleimani, he came on and discussed the fact that it's almost taboo to talk about the fact that it is unhealthy to be overweight. And then it's not that I'm fat shaming or anything like this. It's just from a health standpoint, for your health reasons. That's why I want to point it out and want to discuss that. And that's something I want to just go, and we've only got a few more questions. Something I want to ask you about. I know you came from a blue-collar family, small town, very tightly knit. You were in a very cool culture growing up. These days, I think some people, especially my generation, really lack a little bit of that grit, and something that you clearly are trying to develop in your house as well. So what would you say is something that young people could focus on or try to dedicate themselves to kind of bring back the culture that you grew up in, something that's a little bit more disciplined, a little bit grittier, and something that could really help us further our leadership in this country and beyond?
Well, and not just myself, but I think the coaches I coach with, and I've coached with them since, some of us moved up, some of us moved down, because our kids are different ages. And some people that I coach with are just selfless and they like to give back in the community. But we have a very unique group of men, right, that understand like what kind of men are needed in society and some of the issues that you just spoke of right now. So it's something that's always been on the forefront of our brain, is that we talk about like, hey, these kids are generally soft, right? And it's one thing that's really kind of came to my attention, right? And I've never really thought about it before. Oh, it's the soft, But I think it's more complex than that, And I think by not having people to stand up to small things that get picked away to make these young men soft, and that missing that grit is kind of what's happened over, in an overarching, manner, like, for example, like, oh, well, masculinity is bad. Being a gentleman is bad. Open the door for ladies bad, being the protector is bad, so you're kind of chipping away at this culture of what it means to be a man. And honestly, if you ask me, like, men are, kind of that strong manly role. It's being stepped on, and it's being, looked in a negative way. And I say no. Like I coach, like I said, my coach, I teach these young men that this is what it's like to be a young man. You can be strong. You can also be compassionate. Doesn't mean you can't be, but there's a certain way that I think men should act. And I think that's being eroded, a lot by social media and a lot by, society and these kind of false stigmas. And that's a big proponent of, I guess, why I will continue to coach even when my kids are gone, just because I see what's going on in real time. And part of the reason why I enjoy coaching these young men.
I'll have one more question, then you can take us home, Colby. But, kind of on that note, as coaching, I've got 3 boys. Obviously, I coach a lot as well. But I'm curious to hear your take on how you feel like you're able to instill those principles with those kids. I mean, granted, you don't have as much time with kids that you coach as you do your own boys. So with that amount of time that you do have, how do you feel like you really impress upon them what you want them to learn? Not just the skills they need, but like you said, kind of that mentality.
Well, I think it's the coaching standard you have. What's acceptable behavior, what's not acceptable behavior? Because like you said, the window's small. So they know, like, hey, you may act this way at home, you may act this way at school, but you do not act this way on the field, with these coaches. But truthfully, a lot of those kids are at my house, a lot of them are coming over, a lot of them are hanging out, you know what I mean? So I'm fortunate enough to get more time with them, you know what I mean? And I guess it's one of those things where I didn't realize, this is my 6th year coaching, right? Since I've been retired. I didn't realize the impact I was having, until some of these kids got older, and they sat down, could have a somewhat adult conversation with me, like we rented a lake house and a bunch of the kids all came with, right? There was probably 12 kids, and sitting there chatting with them, be like, oh, I remember when you used to say this to me in Pop Warner, coach, or we're at the house and you made us all plant, pull weeds or whatever it was, you know what I mean? But little things that you do that you maybe don't realize even had an impact, and that you maybe don't even remember. But when you have that standard that's non-negotiable, it does have an impact.
Yeah, I think that's a huge takeaway for us. Even we run a summer sports camp, and then we also coach together from basketball, soccer, flag football, and that's one of the big things I try to do day one, whether we're at camp or whether we're coaching, whatever it is set that tone and let it be known that I don't care what you do, wherever else you are. I obviously would love to help impact that, but when you're here, we're going to set a standard and we're going to do it from the jump. So it's been a ton of fun having you here, Jason, just hearing about your career, your upbringing, the various things you've done since you left the NFL, your philosophies on really how to build these men and build people in general. So just one last question I have for you. What part of the Grit Creed resonates most with you and why? And I'm not sure if that was something that you got a chance to look at online. Are you familiar with it?
Oh, the Grit Creed?
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah, no worries. So that was our 12 principles that we really built the company on. So it starts, I'm someday going to be what I'm now becoming. I don't find an excuse. I find a way. I'm not a problem spotter. I'm a problem solver.
It's kind of like a mission, vision, value, and belief, huh?
Absolutely.
So it's your guys' compass.
Right. So I don't know if there's anything from that necessarily would resonate with you the most, but
maybe what we could ask though is like with Red Realty, like what are some of the core values that you've kind of based your company?
So we actually have a mission, vision, value, belief, for our family. And one of the things that I've always, I guess, explained to the boys, I wanted to make it simple for them to understand at a young age. When I kind of came up with that concept was Babin boys enjoy doing hard things that other people can't or will not do on a regular basis. So that was kind of our dumbed down, as much as I could, so they're young, so they understand it, and I like to bring it up to them, and hey, it's 5 a.m, let's wake up, You told me what you wanted. I'm just here to help. If you don't want that anymore, just let me know.
Back off a little bit. Well, then I think a great question to something you could even take home to your boys today after we had this conversation is, what does grit mean to you?
That's definitely a great question, right? Because it means a lot to I think different people, but I think from my standpoint, grit is just getting the ability to keep showing up, right? Because like I said before, you're going to fail most of the time. And that's in life, that's in business, that's in a lot of things you attempt to do that you've never done before, you're going to fail. And most people, if they fail, they go, I guess it wasn't meant to be. With successful people, they keep getting after it. They keep trying it. They keep going, even when it doesn't make sense. And I don't know how many stories we've all heard, whether it's sports, business, relationships, all the people that had grit, all the people that came out the other side, getting what they wanted.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think you just nailed that one on the head for sure. So from a man who's done it, still doing it, been doing it.
Work in progress.
Right. If that's how you want to put it. I mean, this has definitely been one of my favorite interviews we've gotten the chance to do so far. So really appreciate you coming out today. Thank you all of you at home. That's a wrap for us today here at the Grit.org podcast. Please check out our other episodes. Leave us a comment. Tell us something you enjoyed about Jason's story. Share this with someone you think it would resonate with or impact. As always, we appreciate you tuning in for another episode of the Grit.org podcast.